Alright, so I wanted to show a little bit of the drive back through here. This is Furnace Road. It'll take us back when we get across the bridge. I'm going to go across and then we'll come back to the right at the bridge is where the pull-off is, where you can go back to where the iron furnace actually is sitting, or what remains, I should say. It's a shame because it's one of those sites. It's historic. It should be restored, but sadly it's one of those, sorry about the fingers there, it's one of those sites that just wouldn't let go, and it's just, you know, at some point there's going to be practically nothing left, and it's just sort of unfortunately how it is. But there are a number of buildings that are involved with this, and I'll wind up putting up Cliff's one video from, I think it was last winter, probably like in January. So he went back here when there was less undergrowth and all that. I just don't have the capability of walking and back in through there. This is the Manada Creek here, but it's back that trail there, and the iron furnace is right back there. But we'll go on the stuff that's right off the trail and show you much of the iron furnace as I can. Unfortunately, just with the way my foot is and not wanting to injure myself any further, I'm going to be a little careful. So we're going to go along here. This building right here, this was actually the company, I believe they said the company store. It served like as an office as well, but there's actually like the iron master, the iron furnace master, who's the guy who ran the entire operation. There is an older house that's back here as well somewhere. I'm just honestly not really sure where it is. It might even be that, but somewhere right around the place where the iron master's home was, the mansion would have been where they had those log cabins where the workers, which would be the during the Civil War, the prisoners of war, who were used primarily to fuel the furnace. They'd be throwing like the charcoal and that type of stuff in there, wood and all that kind of stuff. So it was a pretty big operation. There's a whole slew of buildings around here that would have been essential to the operation. I wouldn't be shocked at that building that I sort of turned the camera back to, because it looked like it was a little older and they would be a little closer together, the buildings. So I wouldn't be shocked if that was it, and it would be right there where the furnace is. There are quite a bit more stone ruins and foundations and things of that nature that are back there. Like I said, I'm not going to try to go back there simply because I just don't think my foot can handle it at this stage, and with having this possibility of this job coming up, I can't really be messing around with that. But anywho, there's a bunch of different older buildings. I don't think they have anything to do with that, but you never know. But anyway, so we're going to turn around here and then we're going to go back and we're going to go get out of the vehicle. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start calling the van Chuck. I sort of like that. I'll have to give the name of the individual. He said a couple times about, did you name your van yet? And I haven't. And I talked about potentially doing like a poll or something of that nature. I got somebody else that's trying to get through here. And just to pick a name for the van, because Cliff has a name for his van, and I thought, hey, it'd be sort of fun to have a name for the van. But I sort of like the name Chuck. And if we want to have it female every now and then, it can be Chuckalina or something of that nature. Just have fun with it. But anyways, so maybe we'll go down the other way just a little bit, just to make sure there's no other places. That's the only one I know for sure, the one that's right across the road from Furnace Road as it comes out, that's the company store. And it's like company store, company office, that type of thing. But it was the major employer in this area at that time. They actually bought the Grubb family dynasty. We'll do a video on them at some point, like the Coleman family. But they had I had just done a video on the Hopewell forges, and that was part of their operation that sort of corresponded with the Cornwall Iron Furnace. They were forges, which was what took the pig iron and made it into usable iron. This is a furnace just like the Cornwall Iron Furnace. That and like the Swatara Iron Furnace, they basically made the pig iron out of the iron ore. It was to some degree usable, but it was very brittle, easily broken. So the forges are what took them and gave them a pure content and made them into something that was actually usable at that time. So we're going to turn there then when we come back, but we're going to come down through here just in case we missed anything. I don't think we did. I think everything else along here is newer, and as you get further and further away, you wind up getting into that situation where it's just too far from the furnace to be, you know, something that was probably used with the main complex. But anyways, yeah, we'll go a little bit further here to where I can turn around, and then we'll go back and we'll start the video up at that stage again. Alright, thanks everybody. Alright, so we are here back on Furnace Road, and we're going to be walking over to the iron furnace itself to check that out. We'll actually check out a couple other things as well that are available to us here. And like I said earlier in the video, 1803 is when this land was bought by the Grubbs. They bought it, actually, we've done a video on the Hanover Resolves and talked about Colonel Timothy Green. He's actually the one that they bought the land from, the Grubb family. I believe it was Curtis Grubb that bought this, because Peter Grubb, who was the father of the dynasty, the Iron Dynasty, he had passed on quite a bit earlier. And Curtis and his brother Peter Jr. were the ones that had been running the dynasty at that point. But anyways, they bought it in 1803, but they didn't actually build anything here till 1836. Why that's the case, I really have no idea. But they decided, because of the Manada Creek here, and they always built these furnaces a little further off of the creek, because if the creek, you know, would overrun, that way it wouldn't ruin the dam, or, you know, the iron furnace, like mess up the stonework, and, you know, you're messing with fire and that type of stuff. It's not good to get everything overly saturated with water. But anyways, they actually would divert the stream, and they had like a swell that they would bring through. They have a water wheel and all kinds of stuff, so they could control the amount of water that was coming to the furnace itself. Let me move the camera back. But anyways, they 1836 they ran this, and I think it ran into like the 1860s, and then just at that stage, you know, a lot of the iron businesses were being sold to the big steel manufacturers like Bethlehem Steel, and they were sort of these individual furnaces which were sort of strewn all over the place, and forges as well were going out of business, or they were being bought out by larger competitors, and, you know, these families were just eventually giving up, because the Grubb family had started to sell quite a bit of their holdings to the Coleman family, to Robert Coleman, and this is one that they brought up much later, so maybe they were trying to get back into the iron business again, and trying their hand at it again. This is apparently a pretty successful furnace. But we'll go in here a little further, and we'll see if I can actually get back in here, which I believe I can. I wasn't sure at first, but like I said, we're not going to go climbing all over the place. I know Cliff does a lot more of that. If the camera's a little screwy, it's because I'm trying to get past some of these thorny bushes without actually getting nailed. Ouch! Oh, I failed. Ow. Little bugger reached out and got me. Sorry about that. That sort of hurt. I hate those things because they got like the huge thorns. They're almost like rose bushish in nature. And when they get a hold of you, they don't let go. But as you can see, like we did one at Swatara Iron Furnace where that was in pretty darn good shape yet. This is obviously not that. You can go around the back and you can see another, you know, part of one of these where the furnace part was actually, but I'm not going to try that because And like I said, there's a ton of stonework. If you go over there, there's like where the swell is, where it comes through, where they bring the water in. And I don't have the capability or the balance to be doing that right now, so I'm not going to risk it. But you can see all the stonework here, and there's the furnace part itself. And there's actually, like, you can see where they load from the top. There's a hole up there where they load the material and stuff like that down in here, and then they go from there. So I mean, this is really quite, in its heyday, it had to be impressive, because you can go all around here, and especially if you go out like that way, there's stoneworks everywhere, and nothing like quite as substantial as this, because this is the iron furnace itself that everything was surrounded around. But all kinds of foundations for different outbuildings that they would have had, whatever it was that they had here right on site. And like I said, they'd have how they brought the water in, and Cliff found something where it looked like it's almost like for a bridge, but it was actually, I think that was for the water, and it had the water wheel working off of that, and just to bring the water in as slowly as they needed or as quickly as they needed it. But anywho, so we're gonna go over to the slag piles and just show you that, which that's right there is pretty much the slag piles. But I'll show you that and show you where the creek is, and we'll walk over there so you can see sort of how close they were. Not real close, but you know, they usually tried to have a water source near these because of the convenience of having all that water there. So I'm going to turn it off here for a second, just simply because I don't want to get grabbed by that thing again. Alright, so we're out here again, and so you guys see the iron furnace is right over there. You can see the whole way up to the top. That's where they would be dropping stuff down. But all throughout here, like I said, there's stoneworks and things of that nature. Pretty cool stuff, actually. Which, if we go over here and see if we can see anything else over here. I do want to be careful too as well, because I'm not sure what's in hunting season right now. I think a lot of that stuff is over, but I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, I don't see anything else, but there's apparently it's pretty substantial, because I'll post Cliff's video in the comments, and you can check that out and you can see a little more what's all there, because he's just able to get back in those areas. And I think too, when he went was like in a January time period, so even more of that stuff would all be gone. But this here would be called slag pile. This is where basically they took all the unusable stuff after they had gotten the iron out of it and that type of stuff. So they just would continually just dump it here, and you can see all the slag here. Like these rocks here. And that's what all this is. This is a pile of that stuff. And then go over here a little further, and you can see the Manada Creek, which is what causes the Manada Gap in between the Blue Mountain. I believe, if I remember correctly, you can see right down, yep. You can see right down there, then that's the Manada Creek, and that's what they drew their water from. And there is the John Deere that they used to run around on the property. 1830 John Deere combustion engine, and some of their beer cans as well. A lot of relics up here. I am being sarcastic. Anyways, so it's quite a unique, pretty historic place. And it is, the interesting part is that they actually had like they said, like they had them on loan, but I'm sure they worked some kind of deal where they gave the federal government a certain amount of money, and in essence the prisoners of war were used as like slave labor. So it wasn't right, shouldn't have been done that way, and ultimately quite a few of them never got the chance to go home because of their living conditions and the position that they were put in. You know, you understand that they're enemy combatants and that type of thing, but there's still a whole aspect of human decency that should be observed. You know, these guys were just regular soldiers. It's, you know, it's not like they were plantation owners and things of that nature. And there's still, in my mind, there's a certain etiquette that should be involved with that type of thing and the treatment of individuals. But here's one more look at the Manada Iron Furnace. Like I said, this is definitely, it's a historic site. It should be preserved, but I think the amount of money that would be involved with trying to do something of that nature would be prohibitive, obviously. But it's just it's an example of our history with one of these furnaces that was so essential to our country and how it was built. That's just going to nothing. But it's cool. I wanted to show you this, give you a peek at another cool old iron furnace. And with that, I think I'm gonna head back home and get into the warm, because it's quite chilly today. Thankfully we didn't get any snow yesterday, but we're getting to that time of season. Even though it does sound like January and February, at least here in the Northeast, is going to be pretty seasonably warm, which I'm all right, or unseasonably warm, I should say, which I'm all right with. But anyway, so we will see you guys in our next video, and we will see you all about town. Hi, we are here at Manada United Christian Church. Excuse me, that's the church right there. I still have my cough. They did diagnose what it was. I guess I had some kind of adverse effect to lisinopril, which is a blood pressure medication. So I'm probably going to be coughing yet a little bit because I'm sort of in one of those modes where it just wants to go. Hopefully I have about 2 months and then that's done. Today we're filming Manada Iron Furnace, and the church here was actually, from what I'm aware, was one of those. Now this church in particular, the building that's there now, I don't think that was around in the 1830s, 40s, 50s when the furnace was operating, but the Manada Iron Furnace was the main business, if you will, employment in the area. And the church here is one of the few of the buildings or institutions that still exists from those days that was sort of put here with this whole operation of the different buildings and the workers' houses and that type of stuff. We're here today specifically because we're going to talk about one of the things that's unique with this furnace is during the Civil War, they actually had a camp here for Confederate prisoners of war. The prisoners themselves actually came from Camp Curtin, which is out near Harrisburg, and they had 2 different events from what I've researched. It sounds like they had an explosion of some sort at the furnace, which killed 3 of the Confederate prisoners of war, which they are buried here. We're going to go to their tombstone. It just says 3 unknown Civil War soldiers. And then apparently, you know, the living conditions back then, and especially in a prisoner of war camp, would have been awful. And, you know, if you had something like, which it sounds like in this case, it was like yellow fever or smallpox, went through the camp and killed a whole slew more of them. Supposedly, the cemetery where those guys are buried is right near where the encampment would have been. They would have had really crude log cabins or log buildings for the soldiers to bunk in and to live in. So, you know, once again, the conditions had to be awful. And if you had something like yellow fever or smallpox come through, you really didn't stand a chance. Excuse me, you were in such close quarters that, you know, somebody got that. You know, that's why it took out a whole slew more. Now, how many were actually here on the site of the Manada Iron Furnace that were loaned in essence to the Grubb family to use for the iron furnace, I really don't know. But Anyway, so we're gonna go and we're gonna try to find this. I had filmed this earlier, and there were 3 Confederate flags in front of the grave. Things here a little further, but I thought it was something that was essential to show everybody, because you know it's a part of our history that we're really not aware of. I mean, they had a lot of these different prisoner of war camps all over the place, and yeah, the flags aren't here anymore, which is probably a good thing, because I think when Cliff did his video on this, they wound up getting a little angry about it, because it was like, oh, it's Confederate flags. It's part of our history, unfortunately. So, but yeah, this is where 3 individuals are buried that were Confederate soldiers. They were prisoners of war. Why they got buried here and the other guys were buried other places, I really don't know. But I think it's a pretty unique part of history, and this is part of the groupings of institutions and buildings that were in the area that were dedicated to the Manada Iron Furnace. All right, thanks everybody, and we'll see you next.